So welcome to another war game review from theplayersate.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today we're taking a look at Assault on Gallipoli, 2nd edition, from Hexasim and Gecko Games. This is a two-player World War I
Assault on Gallipoli.
operational game, that covers the Assault on Gallipoli. So this game is designed by, I can't see it.
It is Kieran Oakley and Russell Loki.
And I believe that is a duo out of Australia.
Yes, they are. Yep.
So this
and
is
Gecko Games is an Australian small publishing company.
I think they do it themselves, isn't it? Their
They
company?
did. Yep.
So that was the first edition. So the second edition they teamed up with Hexasim, so we've got a nice new kind of production edition, and also I think Hexasim's able to leverage
A wider audience.
European distribution and things like that. So this is the Anzac landing in the 1915 Gallipoli campaign. So obviously they were making a game that's near and dear to their hearts and to Anzac military history.
Yep.
And so here we have a big board that's divided up into areas, and you have kind of stacks of guys, machine guns, riflemen, artillery units, even some off-board, well, not off, but like naval units. And it is land, dig trenches, or in the later scenarios, it's trench warfare. It is
back and forth, close combat.
Yeah, suppress, go over the top, and try to do your best. And it's not easy, that's for sure.
And it was interesting, you mentioned operational, which it is, but it really has a decidedly tactical feel.
Yes.
Mainly because of the close combat mechanic that uses a little side deck and is almost like a mini game in and of itself. But I kind of like that. So it felt like a couple of different scales mashed together into a playable game.
And so we played scenario 2, which is the Kemal's counterattack, basically. And after the whole scenario, what? 2 spaces had changed hands, maybe.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
It's World War I in that sense, where it's really difficult to take ground and to hold ground and to keep it, and the lethality of the thing means that your forces kind of get wiped out pretty quickly if you're very loosey-goosey with them. But also, it's that struggle to just you feel like you're doing so much for one space.
Right.
And you'll see that kind of all along the lines as you play this as well. What I do really like about this game is the Gallipoli campaign is broken up into lots of kind of different segments and stuff. This is just the Anzac part. You don't have any of the British stuff kind of on the very southern tip of the peninsula.
Well, I know we say that, but I did notice as I was looking through the other counters, there are some British counters.
Yes, that land is reinforced, but
that land is reinforced.
You don't have the southern tip of the peninsula.
I get it.
Only Anzac Cove.
It's mainly focused on the Anzac landing.
And what they did is they broke up the campaign into, I think it's 5 scenarios, which is actually a really neat way to do it. I'm looking at the rule book. The scenario book, and there's 2 scenario books. That's another thing that I really liked.
That was nice.
There's 5 scenarios, and each of them is anywhere from 3 to 5 turns long. And so you might get this board out, and we only played on literally one half of the board, basically. And that might be like, okay, it's a waste, or it looks a bit daunting, but you're not doing the whole thing in a given scenario. You're doing this focused part of it, then this focused part of it, and you'll play through the campaign as you play through the scenarios. And I think that's a really neat way to do it, where it's not just like, here's a 15-hour game, go for it, where there would be like these periods of really nothing that happened realistically for the course of this kind of week or so.
Yeah, I mean, really what he did, or what they did here, was they broke it down into, like you said, 5 scenarios.
And it works really well.
Yeah, 3 to 4 hours a piece. Fairly light and quick playing. It does use cards in a couple of different ways, but it's a traditional area movement hex encounter war game, right? You've got combat factors, you've got movement factors, you've got leaders.
Yeah, different terrain modifiers, movement, all the terrain effects chart, all of those things you'd want, but it's just like spaces instead of hexes.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. The interesting part about the scenario book is that there is 2 scenario books.
Yeah.
You have one somewhere kicking around, maybe? Oh.
I think I put it back in the box.
Okay. But basically, it's over. They give you like a Turkish scenario book, and so it has all the Turkish setups and some special rules for them and like strategy tips. And then the Anzacs also have one. So that way you can set it up at the same time.
Right.
Which I really, really liked.
Always beneficial to help setup be a smaller time commitment.
Yeah, it's now a shared effort because I do my guys, you do your guys, and we're done instead of I do all my guys, hand you the playbook, and then you do your guys.
Doing some of those big war games,
it's a pain.
It just takes hours to set up sometimes, and we're handing the book back and forth. Or we've made copies beforehand, and this was nice to have the two different scenario books. I would agree with that.
Yeah, well, and also it's got pictorials set up.
So
where
you can find the exact
It is
count.
the units, and it tells you which space they go in. That's really nice.
A lot of war games do the unit setup, like the little charts. That was just and they're really life size, so you could literally stack those all up and then just put them out on the spaces.
Which is, I think about some of the big games we played. It's just that's much more easy to process than the long list of numbers and unit designations.
Oh yeah.
So it was really easy to set up and kind of get to the table. The rules are not complex. This is a 25-page rule book, but the last 3 or 4 pages is examples of play and stuff that you won't really look at again. And
really, we were up and running in 20 minutes after we set up.
Yeah, a lot of it is very common or standard mechanics.
Yeah.
You're reading it for the nuance within those. But, you've got some movement factors. You're going to spend your movement points as you move. The leader can give you extra movement points. Cool. That's like 2 pages on the rules, but like you can skim that. You don't have to read those rules. You know those rules.
Yeah.
You want to look at the combat and the close combat. That's where things get. That's where the detail is. That's really important if you mess it up. And so,
but it's not overly complex.
No,
fairly simple. You add some numbers together.
That's how many dice you roll.
Yeah.
And then there's modifiers to the target number that you're hitting, and that's based on
which are all
terrain,
right on your play.
Trenches, leadership. Yeah, the play is really good.
Yep, very good. Double-sided. The other side. The only comment I would have about this game is the colors of the areas are very, very similar.
Yes, and
I mean, we're talking light brown, somewhat light brown, and then a reddish brown. And it's like,
and then the medium brown in between. Yeah, so there's the shades of brown.
My only problem really with it.
And it's like, cool, some of it you can see.
It's pretty clear.
But when you have all your units stacked on top of them, it can be pretty busy, and that is not brilliant.
Yeah.
And all it needed was some like different colored lines or a different dotted line to designate that was the higher elevation, just to help.
Well, I've also seen a lot of area games, not a lot, but I've seen area games where they've put maybe symbols into different spaces that coincide with not just the color, but the symbol.
Yeah,
that was the only
you could
difficult.
have the symbol at the end of each of those.
Right.
Get covered up though. I don't know.
Yeah, it would.
But that was the really the part of the production development that was missing. Everything else in this game, the artwork on the cards is really neat.
Yeah.
It's got its own unique style.
Mounted map board.
Pre-rounded counters are really good.
Nice dice. There's only 5 of them.
You needed more dice.
You needed at least 10.
And you know you did.
Yeah.
This is a chuck and dice game.
It is. I mean, you're more often than not rolling anywhere from 6 to. I think I rolled 13 at one point.
Yeah,
Is that
like
the most?
That's just it. You're rolling from 5 to 8 dice, probably on average.
Yep.
And like they
You
give
get 5
you
dice.
5, so you always.
Yeah.
So luckily, I'm a nut job and have a bunch of D10s kicking around in my house. But I know that a lot of people don't have that.
Yep.
So give us more dice.
Yeah, be aware of that.
But outside of that, the production was really good. They give you the little cubes that are in the 2 different colors for the 2 different sides.
Victory spots.
That use victory spots, which it's just a mnemonic, and I really like it because in each of the scenarios, it's different spaces, so they didn't have to write them all on the board in different colors.
Well, and we do that. We have a whole chest over there with
and they
all
did it for
different
us.
types. They did it for us,
And that was
very
really
nice.
neat. And it's just a very clean and simple way, and a practical way to make 5 scenarios fit on one board.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, looking at the board immediately, strategically, I got to go for these.
Yep.
Right? Over here is wasted. Don't worry about that. Although you do want to try to do a little bit of flanking to put some pressure here. But it was like you were going for the blue. I was trying to keep the blue and maybe snatch a red from you. Didn't end up working out. But I thought the 2 very interesting mechanics that they used was the activation system was very, very neat.
Yes.
It is an alternating activation, but it's all about when your units activate, they flip over to their unfresh side, their exhausted side. When they're on their exhausted side, they're much more open to taking combat losses. They're also less effective in combat in general. So your close combats and your other thing, I very much liked that. So it became a guessing game or almost like a game of chicken. I'm not moving these units. I'm not firing with these units until I really have to.
But then, and that's, we've played...
But there's a risk.
We've played a few games that have that style of mechanic in it. But in this one, more than I think the other ones, is you cannot wait too long. Where in every other game, it's like, I can wait and like out-activate you like a good old-fashioned miniatures game. So the timer in this game is this, it's called the killing time track.
Yeah.
And every time a 10 is rolled, typically in combat, that goes down one space. And so you can roll and like get no 10s between a bunch of combats, or you can get a ton of them.
But you only go down one in one combat, right? So if you rolled 3 10s, it's only one.
But if we're rolling a bunch of combats, which you will need to do,
you're going to get 10s.
it can happen. Or you might go on a streak of not really having any, and so the turn lasts a bit longer, and so you can maybe play that waiting game. But all of a sudden, that clock ticks down, you're like, oh, I've got to go. Blow the whistles, and you just got to send everyone.
Yeah.
Even though it might not be optimal, you got to get them to go, otherwise the clock's going to run out, and then you won't make any progress.
Because when that clock runs out, when it hits 0,
it's done.
The turn ends, and you unexhaust everybody and go to the next turn. And in this scenario, it was only a 3-turn scenario.
Yeah.
So I found myself as the defenders. That very last turn, I was hoping to roll a 10 every time.
And using the action, the event cards,
couple of the
like
cards.
you're trying to run the clock down.
Yep.
So you're like, cool, I might do like an okay-ish attack, just hoping to get
roll
10s.
a 10. Yep.
Instead of where maybe you wouldn't have done that because like the odds maybe weren't great, but you're like, oh, I'm trying to roll a 10 and get it to go. And I felt like the playing for time in this was really meaningful.
Yeah.
Because you could affect it, and it made that alternating activations much more tense than it is in other games,
and made each activation that much more important and impactful. So it really becomes an exercise in you trying to do what you know you need to accomplish that turn, almost first, but simultaneously trying to play keep away with you and your attacks, so I'm not exhausted and can't do anything. Because when you're exhausted, you can't move, right? So it's a balance.
And you get into like the numbers of the thing kind of quickly, even though it's not that. It's like this is a light game, or it's not true. It's like a medium game.
Well, I think it's an introductory game that's medium complexity. And really, it's a game. It's got some gamey elements, cards and other things.
But it gives you enough of that like kind of meat where you're like picking which units to activate and what to do with them, and what that is going to look like. Okay, if these guys are going to shoot into here so that these guys can move in, but I want to move later. Oh, I rolled really badly. Cool, I have to commit other things to kind of get those guys exhausted so I can charge them.
Yep.
There's a lot of really neat things to think about during every activation. And whilst you might be tempted to sit here and shoot all your artillery, you're going to roll 10 dice, you're going to hit 10s.
Yep.
And I think that was something I figured out after we played it. I was like,
I think after about the first turn,
I probably should have stopped. I should have stopped doing the big attacks. Roll them all individually, because then you're less. If I roll 9 dice, I'm going to hit a 10. If I roll 5 dice, in my brain, I'm going to hit it less.
Well, and conversely, because of the way the scenario was set up, I wanted that to happen. So I took a couple of low odd. Kind of stabs in the dark, just hoping, like you said, I want to roll a 10.
I almost don't necessarily care if I get hits. It'd be nice.
At this point
I want
in the game
is the 10.
Yeah. I wanted hits the first couple of turns because you were on me, and so that was that. The activation mechanic I very much enjoyed.
It
I
worked
thought it was
really
very well
well
done, particularly for this style of game. The second mechanic that I actually enjoyed as well, because I enjoy that combat mechanic. And this is the close combat. So it's, you add up all your numbers, and that's going to determine how many cards you're going to get.
Yeah.
Each side's going to get anywhere from 3 to I don't know, 6, maybe 7.
Yeah, 3 to 18 is the max.
Well, I can't even imagine how you would get 18.
If you charged a full stack of fresh guys, it caps out at 18.
Okay.
That's
So
the only
maybe.
way, though.
But it would have to be your guards
It would
units.
like never happen.
Yeah,
Or if there was
very
like just
rarely.
like, well, if you charge guns, they've got 5. You have 2 of those,
Sure.
a machine gun, and some units. You get there real quick.
That's true.
But yeah, so regular combat is a big dice fest.
Mm-hmm.
Close combat, you bring out the combat deck, which is a whole nother mini game basically.
Yeah.
And you probably do 1, 2, maybe 3 in some of the
A turn.
scenarios per
Yeah.
turn. So you do all your activations once the turn finishes. Any spaces where you have units from either side in it, you're going to get these cards dealt out to you.
Yep.
And there's rules about how many you get. It's your
Yep.
firepower with some modifiers, basically. If you're in trenches, you get more. If you have leaders, you get more.
Yep.
And then you then basically play like a matching game.
Yep.
And if you've played, gosh, is it
Napoleon Returns
1815?
1815.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
From Worthington. We played that. That was the
About
only
5
combat
years
mechanic
ago.
in it. This is almost identical to it.
Yeah.
You could almost think of it as similar enough to like playing Wild Blue Yonder or the Down and
Yeah.
Flame system, right?
Yep.
That one, it's like, there's a couple different options, but this one is like, you play a raid, I have to play a raid.
Yep. Or you have to play a card that can act as a raid, like I think the Reserve Trenches.
I think that's the only one.
And then there were events that came out of the event deck that I had that could match any card.
Yeah.
But you are doing that competing. I played a raid, you play a raid, okay, we go to the second round. I play a Creeping Barrage, you don't have a Creeping Barrage.
Maybe I play a reserve trench.
Right. So you match it, but then we keep going until someone can't match.
Yeah, and you have to match if it's possible to match.
Yep.
And so, because you're locked into it, what you're then trying to do is, the person who doesn't have the initiative is trying to steal it after every turn, so that they can get control
decide
and
the
they
cards.
can play the card. And
Yep.
so you're trying to play your kind of rarer ones, because it's less likely they'll be able to kind of match that. Or you might, as if you're the attacker, you're like, cool, I've done some, you might try to withdraw.
Yep.
Because if you keep going with the close combat, whoever loses is probably going to get the whole like stack wiped.
You're going to take more losses as the loser than you are as the winner.
And so
no
if,
doubt.
if it's on a knife edge or you don't want to go that far by playing like, all 18 of your cards or whatever, you can try to back out. It's a die roll, it's not
Yeah.
great, and you see the initiative, but if you can do it, you could
change the tide.
You do a little bit, we can take some losses and then kind of back out of something
Yeah.
strategically instead of going the distance and potentially having your whole stack wiped if
Yep.
you do end up goofing.
Well, and it's the concept of there are 6 different types of cards in that. I think there's about 35 cards in this deck, if I remember
36.
correctly. 36. So there are 6 different types. Some of them are more common than others. I think
And there is a breakdown in the rules so that
right.
you know that.
So Reserve Trench, I think, was the most common.
No,
9.
that was the least
That
common.
was the least common.
The Bayonet Charge has 9 cards.
Okay.
Infiltrate has 6. Ambush has 6. And I think these ones... I think a couple of these have 6 and Reserve Trench is like 5.
Okay.
Like that. It's a little bit less.
So you know in your mind as you're playing it, as you're seeing the cards that are played, you can kind of start betting the odds, right? And say, okay, he just played a Reserve Trench to match me that last time. He's not going to have that again. Well, you might, right?
Yeah.
Because you're drawing these randomly. But that's the great part about this mechanic, that tension, not being able to necessarily totally predict, but somewhat predict that, oh, I can survive this. I've got a good variety of cards here. I'm going to, or I've got 3 Reserve Trenches.
Yeah, conversely, if you have a hand of 6 Bayonet Charges...
You're in trouble.
No, you're winning if you're playing first.
Oh,
'Cause there will
that's
come
true
a
if you have
point
the
when-
initiative.
Because
Yeah.
and so you're like...
They're not going to be able to match it every time.
You're going to play a couple,
Yep.
and you're very desperately hoping to have the initiative and keep it, because then
Yeah.
you have more. Numbers-wise, they're probably going to dry out.
Well,
but
and
that's also risky.
It is. And because of the rule that you have to match it if you can, right?
Yeah.
Several times I had like 2 of the ambushes, right? And I'm like, oh crap. But I got the initiative. I'm like, okay, I'm going to play that ambush.
And all of a sudden, what was a hindrance is now a massive advantage.
Yeah. So you matched it with a reserve. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, he doesn't have another ambush. So then I played the ambush next, and I won that one. And that's, to me, that's an interesting and unique way of kind of creating almost a mini game within the game that is interesting yet totally different.
So I think that was the discussion that we had. Is I really like this. Like we've seen it in other games. It's really fun, but it is like.
Is it matched well with the combat here?
It's like a totally different mini game that they just put into it. And it kind of feels like they really liked it and wanted to put into it.
Potentially.
Because you have this massive bucket of dice system for everything else, and then this one it's like...
a card off.
Here's this card off. Which it's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, and it's fine.
Because you'll do a couple and not like 15 of these.
No.
It's not the end of the world. But it definitely was a little bit jarring where it was like, this is fun and cool, but also like, it is like,
well, and
we kind of just put it in here because we liked it.
Sure.
But it kind of feels that way.
Well, and the only other comment I would have about that mechanic, it is very deadly like the fire combat as well.
Yeah, it just resolved differently.
It's just resolved differently, but to me it matched in that regard the thematic or feel of this. I mean, this was bloody, right? I mean, this was not a good outcome.
No, it was not good.
And I think that the reality of this, if you lose, you're hosed. You're almost going to lose almost your entire stack.
Yeah, because it's really hard to not... like, pulling out, withdrawing is so difficult. You have to have won the initiative, then roll another 3, and then you cede the initiative. Like, it's so difficult to do that if you commit... You're kind of committed.
Yep.
And so that's
very true. Well, and then there's that card. Which is the card? Is it this one that later? Yeah, increases casualties by 2.
Yeah, if that's what it if you, and I think that's the neat, the additional neat part of that system is they can put some extra stipulations on the card. So if you win with a creeping barrage, you inflict more hits.
Yeah.
And I think that was. It didn't happen, but it was fun. That it was like, ooh, that was a possibility.
Well, I felt like the game hinges on dice luck quite a bit, right? You're rolling 6, 7, 8 dice. You're actually having to roll very, very low. More often than not, a standard hit is a 4.
And you'll almost never be doing that.
If you're firing into first level trenches or shallow trenches, you're going to hit on a 3. Deep trenches, you're going to hit on a 2 or less. And then you can also have leaders or other like range penalties. So the reality is more often than not, you're hitting on 2s and 3s only on these 10-siders.
Yeah.
And sometimes we rolled and it's like 3 or 4 hits. Holy crap. Sometimes we got nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean. There's some dice luck. So I liked that this also felt lucky, but it felt a little more strategic than just rolling dice in my mind.
Yeah.
But I totally get what you are saying.
It
just felt a little discombobulated from the 2 mechanics.
Yeah, it turns this from like moving and chucking dice to like also this additional mechanic.
Right.
And I think because it's a pretty easy and introductory style game, it's not the end of the world. But I think they were one additional mechanic away from it being a bit of a kitchen sink.
Probably.
It didn't get there.
Right.
But it was kind of like when we were reading the rules, you're like,
oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it'd be like, oh, here's some like cool modifiers to some dice. No, it's like a whole other game that you that you just like do.
Well, and we haven't really even talked about the action cards.
Which, this is not a CDG. The action cards you'll get a hand of them, and it's cool events to supplement what you're doing. And they're really fun.
I actually really thought this kicked the game up quite a bit.
I agree.
Because there's some unique elements here. Some of them are very, very unique, and you're only going to see them like once a game.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's very situational. You might not even see it in a given scenario because you're like, I don't need to do this.
But some of them are like fairly standard, but they're very, very important. You use to great effect several times in the first 2 turns the keep moving action where you were able to activate again. What was the other one that you fired? You were able to
the
fire.
coordinated fire.
Yeah,
I
oh,
think
that's
it is.
so good. I thought Walking Wounded was good. The supply convoy was good.
The barbed wire where you
that was a
you
great one.
run up, remove the wire, and keep on going. That was really strong.
You got a sniper that was pretty fun.
No, I couldn't. I missed.
You missed.
I think that was fun.
I was glad you missed. Oh, the hidden gully was cool because it allowed you to move through these impassable cliffs. So it reminded me of like the Plains of Abraham, where they're like climbing up the wall.
Very
the
similar,
rock
very
walls.
similar. Or then it was I gave wrong orders to your artillery where they got lost and exhausted, so they couldn't shoot.
And then it was cool also as the Anzac. I had these 4 or 5 ships, which acted as my long range artillery, and that was fun. I'm glad they threw that element in there. I'm not sure historically, did they give that much shore bombardment?
Yeah, without the Navy, this would have been
a total
an absolute
bloodbath.
disaster.
But I enjoyed that part because once again, I was picking key elements, and we kind of learned later in the game, maybe we should be targeting each other's artillery a little bit.
But I think that's what makes the game interesting and fun. Is that you're like, cool, do we turn this into like an artillery duel?
Yeah.
And then it's like, then you're using your machine guns as supporting fire to reduce guys. Then you send the riflemen in for close combat. And you can plan and do all this stuff and pick your activations and be really strategic about it. And then all of a sudden the time's like, no, gotta go.
Yep.
And I think that it's such a neat, I really like the interplay between the timing and how much you have to try to do.
Agreed.
I think it works really, really well. And it keeps the game moving along at a pace, and it makes almost every decision. I actually have a lot of meaning. Like every time it was my turn, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do now that some things have changed since my last activation? I really liked it.
I do always enjoy a game that really forces me to identify my short-term, mid-range, and my long-term goals, and I think this does that very, very well.
And that's really impressive for a game that really the rules aren't all that complex, and anyone could really pick this up and play this.
Well, and it was pretty fun. I like dice, right?
Yeah,
I enjoy cards.
With all that, it doesn't take itself too seriously.
No.
Like it's got a good amount of like notes and like history and stuff in the books and bits and pieces, but it's still chuck a bunch of D10s.
Yeah.
It's a dice bucket of dice a little bit. And then there's kind of card off stuff, so it doesn't get bogged down in being too dry or too serious in it as well.
Yep, agreed.
What I'll do is I'll show you the board and how it works so you get a bit of a frame of reference what we're talking about, and then we'll wrap up with a few final thoughts. So here's a look at the map. At least this was scenario 2 that we did, which is the Turkish counterattack, or the Ottoman counterattack. So you can see we've got all the map divided up into these areas. Almost all of them have these trenches. There's 1 shallow trenches, 2 deep trenches, and I have a stack of units in them. The way the game works is you're going to roll off to see who has the morale initiative, and that's effectively like who decides who's going first and things, and who goes first. That's done by who has the highest roll or has the lowest roll, but you have the casualty differential between that. So that's a very minor part of the game, but you're going to do that. You're going to get dealt a hand of these action cards, and the action cards come in 3 different kind of flavors. We have brown ones, which are just kind of normal actions that will like supplement what you're doing. Some of them are very, very strong, where it might like give you an additional round or an activation, basically. Some of them will be these red ones, and this is your whole turn, basically. You take 1 action card from the discard pile, or you can move the killing time marker, which the killing time marker we'll talk about here in a second. Or you have these green ones, which are, you can use them out of turn as an interrupt or any time that you want. So you'll have a hand of those, and they're just like additional things that you can do. This is not a CDG, they don't fuel what you're doing. The main course of the game is, I go and do something, it's alternating activations. So in this instance, what you might do, for your activations, you're effectively going to move guys, and you're going to shoot with guys. That's really the 2 things that you're going to be doing in them. So in this instance, let's say we've got this stack of guys here. Well, that's a terrible idea. Those guys are already... This was at the end of the game, and we'd already done a whole bunch. So I've got this stack of guys here, okay? So let's do a fire attack with these dudes, and they are going to shoot into this space right here. So what we'll take a look at is the units that we have and calculate kind of our odds. So we're in this space. I'm going to forget where we are. So we have a machine gun, and he has a 3 firepower with his tiny little superscript 3 range. We don't care about the range because we're adjacent. And I've got these guys who are 2, and these guys who are 2. So I have 7 dice that I'm going to roll. And my leader gives me +1 to the target number that I'm trying to hit with my 7 dice. So we're going to put those there. And in this game, you roll D10s. And so the game gives you 5, but you will often need a lot more than that. So I've got more. So we've got 5, 6, 7 D10s. Let me put this out right here. And that's what we're going to shoot into there. So I'm going to shoot into this space right here. Now this -2 for the trenches is a -2 from the target number I need to hit. The normal base target number to hit is 4 or less. You're trying to roll low in this game. So I'm going to hit on a 4 or less, but now I'm going to hit on a 2 or less. So that's not very good, but my leader, like I said, gives +1 to that number, so I need to hit on a 3 or less. So I'm going to roll 7 bones on a 3 or less. So in this instance, I hit 1 time, I hit 2 times. I also rolled a 10. That's really important, and it's partly off camera. Let me show you. The board's like real big, and you kind of don't use half of it in certain scenarios. So over here, we have this killing time track. And every time you roll a 10, the killing time track goes down 1. And so currently it is at 0 because we just entered the game, but it goes down. If it ever gets to 0, that's the end of the turn. So if you're playing defensively, you're trying to run the clock down. And if you're attacking and you roll a bunch of 10s, you're like, no, you don't want that. So what we have here is an instance where the Anzacs have to take 2 hits. That marker went down 1, so that's good for them because they're defending in this scenario. So to take hits, you are simply going to choose units and basically flip them over to their exhausted side. So we are going to flip over, well, the Remnant is a little different. So we're going to flip over this guy, and we're actually going to kill the Remnant. That's what we're going to do. Because the Remnant is not very strong, and if we lose him, he doesn't count towards a casualty because he's effectively already been counted as a casualty. So this is what happens. We flipped one guy and we lost a little Remnant. We've still got these nice healthy guys that we can do something with, so we're going to put those back on the board. And they're going to sit right there. Everyone who just fired is now inactive. So it's called exhausted. So we flip them over. They now cannot move. They cannot do reaction fire. So when you do something with units, it removes the threat of further actions with that unit. And so these guys know these guys aren't going to charge in. And now that they're flipped over, I can shoot them back. And that kind of return fire will be more effective. It's more likely to kill because they can't flip because they're already flipped. And so this is a game of activations. You are trying to keep your guys fresh as long as possible, let the enemy flip themselves over exhausted, and then attack those exhausted guys, because that's when you're going to inflict casualties and remove units from the board. The other thing that you're going to be trying to do is moving guys in, right? This is a World War I game. You got to charge the trench lines, go over no man's land. To do that, you are going to move guys into an area. Unfortunately, when you do that, they will flip over. And then you're going to take some some defensive fire, potentially. And we'll do it just to show it. So in this instance, we've got a machine gun is fresh with a leader who's fresh. These guys are already exhausted. So we're going to do defensive fire. We're going to do 3. And these guys are running out in the open, so it's a 4 to hit. But we have a leader who's giving us +1. Whoopsies. So it's 5 to hit. It was these guys. Yeah, it was those guys. Well, I messed it all up. Welcome to the game. So we're going to roll 3 dice needing 5s. And I rolled 1 hit. So I'm going to take 1 hit and we'll just kill the little... we're going to kill the machine gunner because he's not going to help us in close combat. So we'll get rid of that guy. And now these guys are all flipped over as well. Oh, that's not good. That's really bad. Is it this guy? Yeah. And then we got these guys here. Okay, perfect. Then because I'm running in and attacking, I get to do a kind of a charging, advancing fire. So I've got one die with a +1 there in a trench. So I'm going to hit on a 3, and we rolled a 9, so it didn't do anything. What's going to happen then is we're going to go back and forth, back and forth. I might try to support that and might try to run more guys in, and they're going to flip over. They're going to run more guys up the hill. Well, I can't go up this hill because it's a red border. We're going to send some more guys up. Well, those guys are used, or machine guns are useless. We're going to send more guys up the hill. And once the turn's over, because either the killing time track is done, or everyone's gone already, or we both consecutively pass, we're going to resolve close combats. And close combats are, we both have guys in this trench line. We're both in the same space, we're going to do that. And so to do close combats, they function a little bit differently. You don't roll dice in them. There's just like a separate card game. So we have 1, 2, 3 strength. It's not great. And the defender has 1, 2, 3, 4 strength from the trenches, and they have a +1 from their leader as well. So if you add that up, the defender's going to get 5 combat cards, and the attacker's going to get 2 combat cards. 1, 2, 3, +1 is 4, sorry. So it's 5 to 4, so there's this combat deck, and we deal these out, 1, 2. So we've got 5 to the defender, and 4 to the attacker. And this is where the attacker goes first, because they have the initiative, they're charging across. And basically you're going to play a game of war. It's this little mini game. So I'm going to start by playing a creeping barrage. And the defender must match that. So if we look through their hand, do they have a creeping barrage? No, they do not. However, they have a reserve trench, which matches any other card. So they are going to play that. That keeps us in the game. Now what the defender's going to do is they're going to try to steal the initiative. So they're going to roll a d10, need a 3 or less. They did not roll a 3 or less, and so the attacker is going to go again. So at this point, oof, these are not good. I am going to play an infiltrate. So I'm going to play an infiltrate, and then the defender has to play an infiltrate. The defender does have an infiltrate. Perfect. So we match that as well, and we're going to kind of keep these separately because you have to count these up for losses at the end. Then the defender's going to try to steal the initiative, and they successfully do. So they rolled a 3. So now they're going to play offensively here. So we have a raid, a bayonet charge, and a bayonet charge. The raid is more rare, so it's more likely that they will not have the corresponding raid. So they're going to say, well, I'm going to raid you back. And then the attacker, who's now playing second initiative, doesn't have a raid, but they have a reserve trench. So they're going to play the reserve trench to match that. And now they're going to try to steal the initiative back. They do not. So it stays with the attacker. The attacker has a bayonet charge or a bayonet charge. They're going to play a bayonet charge. And now the other player is going to play a bayonet charge to match. And unfortunately, this is where bad luck for the attacker and not having enough cards really hurts. They're going to play their bayonet charge. And I can't respond to that, so I'm going to lose the combat. The loser of the combat takes as many casualties as combat cards that the winner played, which was 5. So I was take 5 casualties from this. The reality is I'm going to go, I can change this for a remnant, so that's 1, and I can kill the remnant is 2. I'm going to remove this for 3 and replace it with a remnant, and then I'm going to kill the remnant for 4, and I'm going to kill this remnant for 5, and my lone little leader is going to run all the way back to where he came from. And then the winner of the combat is going to take then the number of combat cards they played divided by 3, basically, round it down. So they're going to take 1 hit. And we'll take the 1 hit on our useless little... We had a little remnant here. This guy is going to eat it, because it doesn't really hurt us there. But that's what that looks like. It's a little bit of this kind of different mini game. You'll probably do 2 or 3 of these, perhaps, in a given turn. But it definitely is like you do all your regular moving and firing and chucking dice and mounting artillery and all the sorts of extra actions that you're doing. Running in, trying to take these objective spaces and hold them till the end of the turn. At the end of the turn, they will flip to your color. And then you'll also do these close combats. But that's really the crux of the game. You'll go for a number of turns as you need to, based on the scenario. You might have reinforcements landing. You'll be shelling with the ships out in the Aegean Sea. There's a lot of artillery that's firing back and forth, but it's about exhausting your enemy and then capitalizing on that with regular attacks to remove the enemy units. But that's kind of how the game works, and what we'll do is we'll wrap up here with a few final thoughts. So that was a look at the board. I had a really good time playing this.
Yeah, no doubt.
The decision space within this game was pretty huge.
Yep.
For a game whose rules are really easy to pick up. I really liked that. And it reminds me of a couple of other World War I games
we
that
talked
we played.
about this, yep.
Verdun 1916, very much that.
From Fellowship of Simulation.
Yeah, and it's, sure, the areas, but it's also about, it's trying to get people to lie the pieces down and then go over the top. Yep. Identical situation.
Yeah. You want to get these exhausted and then go over the top, because exhausted units are not as good in combat. And it also can't do a defensive fire.
Yes, and it reminds me a little bit also of Lamps Are Going Out. It's a totally different scale, but it was a similar thing where it was like, you have to fight through these guys and get them all flipped, then you start taking wounds. And what I mean by that is it can be just so difficult to get through guys in this way. Yeah. Because as much as it was really difficult fighting in reality, they were all in these trenches. The terrain was really, really harsh for both sides, and you see that in this. And so there's a lot of movement, but also the reality is broadly it's quite static.
Sure. I want to go back to one of the comments you just made. The unit composition and what ends up happening to the units and how they can, I thought, fairly, not easily, but can be removed from the board. It really creates an interesting attritional exercise in how am I going to keep a force together that's going to be able to go in there somehow, some way, at some time, and do what I need to do. And that's very challenging. But it is key with the activation, with the use of artillery. You got to do those things well. And then complement that with the cool little cards and their mechanics to really take it. I'm going to move twice, or I'm going to move through this barbed wire. You removed one of my barbed wire one time. And those rules, I think, work very well with the attritional nature of the combat. And it's fascinating to look at the board. After the first turn, I thought, oh, crap. This is going to be bad. And you know what? I was able to recover. I moved guys up, reconsolidated, did some really good attacks to you on artillery fire, and all of a sudden it was a new game.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of, in that third turn of the scenario, it was anyone's game. I think either of us could have, you were in a good position to get at least 3 of my points.
And I think they did a really good job, at least going off of this scenario, they did a really good job of working out the victory conditions and the time.
Yeah.
Because if this game was 4 turns, I think the Anzacs would have a really tough time of it.
I think one more turn and you absolutely had.
Because, but I really liked how the game ended, where it was like, I had killed a bunch of your guys, you had killed a bunch of my guys, we'd backfilled with all of our reserves, and we'd had one last go of it.
Yep.
And if there was that additional 4th turn, it would have been a bloodbath one way or the other. It already was. Look at how many guys are dead.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But that just tells me that they spent time play testing this, even just this scenario, but I presume all the other ones as well, to make it so that it wasn't just a walkover, basically. And I appreciate that's evident in the game.
And I also think they did a really good job. If you look at this board, this is like a puzzle. Right. The pieces are not standardized. They're not. there are some really odd shapes here. They somewhat follow the terrain, I am sure. I don't have like a geography style map to look at, but it felt that way. And there were several times where we were just out of range of an effective artillery barrage, or just out of range for these guys to attack those guys. And I liked that.
Or it's like, oh, these guys are over here, and I'm like, oh, I can just run them up. Nope, there's an impassable cliff.
Yeah, there
like,
you go. Yep.
There was some really neat parts where you're like, oh,
Yep.
that's why they were over there, and that's
Yep.
why they didn't run over here. Okay, great.
Yeah. Well, and historically, I would guess this is where the action really happened.
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because of the high cliffs and the higher elevations. But I think they did a good, Karen and Russ did a good job of playtesting and playtesting and playtesting until they realized, oh, I got to make this space this big and here and put this border.
And then it's like, okay, the non-uniform shapes of the spaces change adjacency and like bring in more spaces, or they might cut ones off of what is and isn't next to each other.
Very interesting.
Sometimes that affects range from the naval units or artillery units. Lots of neat parts within what they've done with the map as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a really enjoyable time playing this. This is a game that I think pretty much anyone could pick up and play.
Yes,
the rules
agreed.
are pretty easy to learn. Chucking some dice, doing some card play for close combat.
I don't think there's anything here that's so mind-boggling that you're not going to be able to pick it up and grok it. And I think the game is probably, marketed as that introductory, yet meaty. I would say this is a mid-level game.
Yeah, so
It's got some meat.
we talked about like Napoleon Returns. This is much meatier than that.
Yeah, Napoleon Returns,
Right.
well, a total blast, was a lot lighter than this. This is definitely meatier, a little more in depth, a little more involved, but then it throws in this mechanic and it keeps it kind of gamey, and it's bucket of dice.
Right, and it's like, and the scenarios are going to take you 2 or 3 hours. You're going to play it in an evening instead of a Gallipoli game would take you like 15
20 hours.
Like you don't. They cut it into bite-sized pieces, kept it focused, and that's a credit to actually being able to get it to the table.
I think it's important that we talked about the games that this reminds us of. I also want to say a game that it doesn't remind me of. Gallipoli 1915 from GMT.
I still have it.
I know you have it kicking around somewhere.
I think it's on the other shelf.
That game is amazing, right? It is a very interesting game.
Yeah,
but it's overdone to the point where it's almost unplayable.
Yeah, this is a game that is a simulation. And it is,
Gallipoli 1915 from GMT. The Rifle and Spade series, I think is what it was called. I really think it was good, but it was over the top. Over the top.
Yes.
You're breaking die rolls into tenths of a percentage point.
Yes.
And taking losses. It was insane. I had a great time with that one.
We
played that 3-4 years ago, but it was too much. Now, you have also played that game again with some modified second rules.
Yeah, they came out with second edition rules, and they came out with a new combat tracker, which was half the pain of that game.
Made it easier.
Those make it much better and much easier. But that one's also a bit of a struggle if you're not doing it from the beginning, because the setup is like, you have like 3 different units in a stack.
Yeah.
From 3 different formations, and it's a chip pull formation activation
Yep.
game, and so you have to. Oh,
who do I have
It's
in
these
there?
guys. You have to
Yeah.
look through every freaking stack to find your guys.
I felt like the stacks were pretty big in that one, if I remember correctly.
Even if they were only 3 or 4, they're so clustered together, just like they are here, that it was
hard.
It was a bit of a nightmare.
It was hard. I felt like they were more like 5 and 6.
But yeah, it had some neat elements to it. This is totally different.
I bring that up because that's one end of the spectrum.
This is the other.
This is right in the middle. And is there a third Gallipoli game that is kind of light?
It's called The Landing by Joe...
I own it. I've never played it. Joe Schmidt.
That's right.
From Catastrophe Games. I've never played it. It's
That's
a solitaire.
the other end of the spectrum.
It's a solitaire game. I would also throw in there Ottoman Sunrise.
Ottoman Sunset.
Right, Sunset. Habsburg Eclipse, Ottoman Sunset. Because that has a very cool little, almost like a side mini game.
Yeah, the little Dardanelles Straits box.
On the Dardanelles Straits, and you're kind of maneuvering. And if the British get to Constantinople, game over.
Yeah.
So you got to build 2 or 3
will very regularly.
If you don't build 2 or 3 fortifications there, you're going to be overrun. So those are kind of the 3 games that I've played. I need to get the landing now. I need to get. I own it. I need to get it out and play it because it's a card game and it really is not difficult.
I think it's a very, very introductory friendly game.
I'll play that one because that might be a cool discussion. Is compare and contrast all of the Gallipoli games.
Well, I have to get a Gallipoli book.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So,
we talked about that.
Assault on Gallipoli from Hexasim and Gecko Games.
I really enjoyed this. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I enjoyed this too. I'm glad we actually got it to the table. We had the first edition. Now we got the second edition, and this is much more available to people.
Yeah.
With Hexasim distributing it.
Well, and I also think Hexasim, it is a little better. Meaning, I think the art's a little better. I think the components are a little bit better. The first edition was fine. I think this takes it up.
They zhuzhed it up. They put it in a much more reasonably sized box.
Yep.
One of the old box was pretty unwieldy as well. So I think they did a good job teaming up with an established company and putting out a product. And the product was really fun. I had a good time with it. And I think that a lot of you probably will too. So Assault on Gallipoli from Hexasim. Check it out if you're interested. But appreciate you very much for tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.